This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
For giving towns and cities deeper emotional identities. Teams help to define the particular character of an urban community, giving citizens a sometimes glorious sense of place and sharply drawn collective memories. Baseball sometimes furnished a respite, albeit a short one, from grinding and unfulfilling work and from the social stresses and dislocations of urban life. At its best, baseball could even reduce antagonisms arising from class, religious, ethnic, and racial divisions. In a nation comprising a multiplicity of ethnic, racial, and religious groups, one without a monarchy, an aristocracy, or a long, mystic past, the experience of playing, watching, and talking about baseball games became one of the nation's great common denominators. In the perceptive words of British novelist Virginia Woolf, it provided a center, a meeting place for the diverse activities of a people whom a vast continent isolates and whom no tradition controls. No matter where you were, you pulled off the hit-and-run play, the double play, and the sacrifice bunt the same way in one town as in another. In the first half of the 20th century, baseball was, as Bill Veeck once put it, the only game in town. Never before did the game occupy such a central place in American life. The entrepreneurs in charge of the representative nines in the larger cities established an entity that became known as organized baseball, which consisted of an elaborate hierarchy of major and minor professional leagues. They concocted an elaborate myth of the game's origins, erected great civic monuments in the form of ballparks made of steel and concrete, and instituted an annual fall rite known as the World Series. Led by Babe Ruth, the game propagated epic heroes, whose dimensions of public involvement were equaled by few other figures in American history, and Ruth's team, the New York Yankees, became synonymous with success. In the front office, Branch Rickey, first of the St. Louis Cardinals and then of the Brooklyn Dodgers, not only brought to the baseball business a new rationality, but also, with his role in breaking the color ban in 1946, contributed directly to a new era of American race relations. By mid-century, there were other games in town. After 1950, America's game confronted potent competition, not only from other professional sports, especially football, but more importantly from a shift by Americans from public to private, at-home diversions. Attendance at all levels of baseball fell. Minor league baseball became a shell of its former self, and hundreds of semi-professional and amateur teams folded. Professional baseball responded to the crisis by planting additional major league teams in new population centers, building new stadiums, and trying to harness the new technological marvel of television. The empowerment of professional players in the last quarter of the 20th century not only ended their serf-like relationship to the owners, but also subtly altered the public's perceptions of the athletes and the game. In the early 21st century, revelations of a massive drug scandal became a public relations nightmare for Major League Baseball, while, at the same time, the public response to the crisis reflected the ambivalence of the American people. An analysis of baseball's recent troubles, however, should not obscure the game's continuing vitality and importance. Despite its limitations for conveying the nuances of baseball, television has allowed many more people to see the game played at higher levels of excellence than ever before. In the 1980s and early 1990s, both big league and minor league attendance increased appreciably. In the late 1990s and early 21st century, attendance at not only big league games but also at college and minor league games reached all-time highs. With baseball flourishing in the Caribbean basin and Japan, baseball increasingly reflected the larger historical process of what scholars described as globalization. Perhaps no sign of the game's durability has been more important than the soaring interest in an alternative baseball culture represented in novels, poetry, nostalgic movies, rotisserie baseball, sabermetrics, dozens of websites devoted exclusively to the game, and a collection of baseball souvenirs. Now college students can even take courses in baseball history and literature. In the opening decade of the 21st century, as in the past, baseball's grip on the American people rests to a large extent on its power to evoke continuity.